Okay. So, everyone okay? Semi-awake? It's always a challenge. We have Steve, Rick, and David talking about all those sort of big policy issues and all these different concerns. And it's a bit like open access is this beautiful, hopefully beautiful house we're all building, and you've got the architect and the designer and the interior decorator, and I'm here and I'm going to talk about the plumbing schematics. So bear with me because we're having a problem with the plumbing of the plumbing right now. So thank you. It's been really interesting, and I want my timer. I only have 10 minutes, so I want to make sure I maximize them. Okay, so yeah, all right, start again. Hi, welcome. I'm Roy Kaufman, I'm with CCC. Okay, so from CCC perspective, we're certainly interested in all the policies and attend all the discussions, but we're kind of here, our role here is to make whatever gets decided work. So it's about making open access work, and whether it's a CC BY or a CC BY NC, that's what you guys are going to decide, and then you're going to turn to us, we hope, and say, okay guys, implement this. So, with open access, we think a lot about APC management, and CCC started doing APC management about 7 years ago for a major publisher who was using our RightsLink service and said, hey, we've got these payments we're trying to gather up from our authors, can you help us with this? And we said, sure, why not? And at the time, it's what I call the open access then. Some of you who've been doing open access for 5, 6, 7 years will remember this is what I call publisher level open access. You might have 5 journals, you might have 2,000 journals, but you've got one price, you're expecting that price to be paid by one author, and whatever your license terms are for your articles, whether it's just copy, back then it might have been all rights reserved, might have been something that looked like a CC BY NC or whatever it was, that's how it was. Publisher level open access. Now here's where this problem with the slide is going to be most acute, because as Steve can attest, he calls this Roy's scary slide, so that's what we call it. We call it, Steve Hall calls this the scary slide. That's how we refer to it at CCC. There's another 2 boxes down there that you cannot see at all. But essentially, when you're looking at open access, you've got all of these things that are all going into how you're clearing. Right now, focusing primarily on APCs, but not exclusively. So you've got all these factors in determining price. It could be a corporate sale. You might have a corporate sponsor. You might have a funding agency with a special arrangement. You might have institutional holdings, and so if the author comes from a place that subscribes to your journal, you charge them less. You might have an institutional subscription model where if you pay for extra, you get a discount. Wiley has like that model, for example. There's a whole lot of other models, which of course I can't remember right now. You might want to charge, I know some of them. You might want to charge researchers in the developing world a different price. So if they're from a Hinari or a Wari country, you might want to have a discount. You might want to have a special member offering. You have all of these things, and these are just getting into the price. So then where do those go? Well, at the bottom left, those squiggly lines, that's actually should say funding agency, university, author, and sponsor. So 4 different entities who might ultimately be paying the price for your open access fees. They're all down there, and God, this is so hard. They're all down there, and that is a separate workflow. You need to figure out how you're going to get the money from them. Okay, then you have all these factors that determine both rights and fees. So, someone already mentioned that you might have a different price for CC BY versus a CC BY NC. I know Nature does that. So you might have member-specific rules. So if a member submits an article, the reuse rights may be different from the reuse rights that you grant the general public. A lot of this is done to drive membership, obviously, for membership organizations. You might have a CC by NC, or as they're starting to talk about in the STM Trade Association, CC by NC ND plus. Okay, I can tell you what it is, but you really don't want to know. But all of these things are going to be out there, but whatever your model is, if you want to get that money from Wellcome Trust or RCUK, you might have a special policy for them. You might have a special deal with them. You might have a special deal with Howard Hughes. All of this has to sort of come in and out, and then at the bottom right, which is sort of the traditional CCC strong point, would be the license. In the actual terms, and there's different categories of licensees. Most publishers will have different rules for academic reuse versus corporate reuse. If it's a republication from one STM member to another, very often it's free, but if it's a republication from an STM member to a non-member, there's a fee. And you have all of those things, and all of those need to go into the publisher's open access workflow. So you've got all of these factors. Believe me, there are boxes with as many numbers and letters and acronyms further down there. And that's how the publisher is looking at it, or how the publishers are beginning to look at it, or how many publishers have already implemented it. The problem with this slide is as complicated as it is it's kind of a publisher solipsistic worldview, because it looks at only the publisher workflow. So, this is where we were really focusing, from 7 years ago to about 2 years ago, we really started focusing on the publisher workflow and getting all of these aspects. So, what are we missing? Thankfully, a slide that works. So if you imagine that slide with all of those things for the publisher, now imagine that same slide for every other stakeholder. So it's great to have the publisher workflow down, but if you're the publisher, you really care about the authors, probably, of all of these. That's who you're worrying about most. Well, the author has their own workflow. They don't care about the plumbing schematics. They don't care how you're doing open access. They want to know that if you want to collect an APC from them, you've made it easy. So, and this is where some of the RIN recommendations of, come on guys, you really all need to work together. All the stakeholders have to figure this out together. For the authors, some of you may know, we recently at CCC signed a deal with Aries System, because that's the author workflow. At the acceptance, if you want to collect an APC, you need to be in their workflow, not in the publisher workflow. People, the authors don't care about your workflow. They don't care how you do this. Funders, well, they're starting to ask for workflow because they want to know that there's compliance. So they're giving these block grants, particularly in the UK, RCUK, Wellcome Trust, they're giving all this money. Well, they have their own workflow. They want to get this data back out, and right now it's kind of clunky. They know if you've complied when you apply for your next grant and report it. That's not really what they want. That's not looking at their needs any more than, and by the way, they don't care about the publisher workflow, and maybe they care about the author workflow, but they really care about their own. Universities, last 2 months we've spoken to about 20 universities in Europe, the UK, and the US. Wow. So each university could have its own version of that publisher workflow. Imagine 20 of those schematics. This is really not worked out yet. And even in the UK, where it's the most far advanced, this might result, the APC payment infrastructure, it could be at the library level, it could be at the grant compliance level. Right there, completely different things. We started talking to the universities about saying, well, how do we help your workflow? Well, we'll put in the grant number. First thing we got back was, well, which grant number? Well, we said, well, the grant number for the article. They're like, which grant number for the article? Are you putting in our number or the Wellcome number or the RCUK number? We need to make this work if we're going to really have a robust system of collecting APCs to fund the publishing process. We really need to be very open to understanding that once we get our workflow cleaned up, and we're working on it, that's the royal we of publishers, We have these other workflows, which is the royal we of researchers, because most publishers also are, many of us are also researchers and part of the research community. And so I just wanted to, point out that this is really where it's going. But to make this work, it's all got to be, I'm running out of time, it's all got to be workflow driven, and it's got to be workflow driven for the constituency who you're trying to help. And so it's not always going to be the same workflow, and all of this stuff is up in the air. And as confused as we are in the publishing world, in the university world, a lot of this is even harder. And we really need to listen to each other. I don't know which we I'm talking about anymore. We really all do need to sit down and ask a lot of questions and find out how things really run, where these things reside, in which departments, what systems are being used, and do whatever we can to start integrating this stuff. So thank you. I'm out of time and out of slides.